All right, Chapter 6 of Who Was Ben Franklin. Chapter 6 is called Revolution, so it's going to be about the American Revolution today. So here we go. The Franklins moved into a London apartment. Ben showed Billy places he had known in his days as a young printer. Besides helping his father, Billy studied law in London. He became friends with rich, young English people. Soon, Billy seemed more English than American. Ben was pleased. England ruled the colonies. Ben hoped that one day Billy would serve in the English government. Ben needed 3 years to complete his mission. In 1760, the British government agreed that Pennsylvania deserved help. The Penns had to pay more money for the French and Indian War. But the Franklins did not go home yet. Ben enjoyed the attention he was getting as America's greatest scientist and inventor. Billy was about to get an important job. In August 1762, the King of England named William Franklin Royal Governor of New Jersey. Soon after being named to run New Jersey for the king, William was married. His wife was named Elizabeth Downs. He had met her at a party. The newlyweds sailed to America. They settled in Burlington, New Jersey. Ben returned to his wife and daughter. Only 15 miles separated Philadelphia and Burlington. Ben and his son saw each other often. Here's some pictures. For 2 years, Ben spent a lot of time on post office business. But there was new trouble with the Penns. The colonists wanted Pennsylvania to be taken away from the Penns. They wanted their colony placed under the king's direct rule. In late 1764, Benjamin was sent back to England to make this happen. He had been in England for a few weeks when a more serious problem arose. England had won the French and Indian War, but the war had been costly. England needed money. To help raise funds, England passed the Stamp Act in early 1765. The new law taxed Americans on newspapers and other paper goods. So then it says a little sidebar here, the Stamp Act. It was used to help pay its debts. The British government created a tax in the form of a stamp. This tax stamp was required on all publications and legal papers throughout the colonies. So if you see in this picture here, this stamp would go on newspapers and all sorts of papers, and it was what helped them get money. But the colonists did not like the Stamp Act. They didn't like having to pay that extra money. English people asked the famous American his opinion about the new tax. Franklin opposed it, but not very strongly. He didn't know that 3,000 miles away, Americans were enraged by the tax. In fact, the colonists were rioting. When Philadelphians learned that Franklin wasn't fighting the tax with all his might, a mob threatened to burn his home. William Franklin rushed from New Jersey to take Sally away. Deborah refused to budge. She prepared to defend her home with a gun. Luckily, the rioters stayed away. Ben learned about events at home. He saw that Americans wanted him to speak for them. He decided to express their anger, even if he didn't feel it deeply. Almost overnight, he became a leading Stamp Act foe. He wrote to British newspapers. He debated with British lawmakers. And in early 1766, he argued against the Stamp Act before Parliament, Britain's lawmaking body. A few days later, the tax was repealed. Americans gave Franklin much of the credit. However, there was talk of new English taxes. Ben felt that he couldn't go home during this crisis. Also, other colonies besides Pennsylvania were asking him to handle their problems with England. Britain did pass more taxes on tea and other items. As Britain taxed the Americans and sent in soldiers to enforce its laws, Franklin changed. No longer did he just act as America's spokesperson, he truly hated England. He spoke so angrily that the English called him the prime conductor of the American rebels. On Christmas Eve of 1774, William wrote to his father with bad news. Deborah Franklin, Ben's wife of 44 years, had died of a stroke. William blamed Ben for her death. He felt that her heart had been broken because Ben had been away for 10 years. Ben knew that there was some truth to this, but it hurt to hear it from Billy. He also knew that he and his son were growing apart. Ben was fighting for America's rights. Billy was the king's governor in New Jersey. He sided with England. Ben was at a low point in his life. His wife was dead. His son was angry at him. They were on different sides of a great political fight. England blamed him for the trouble with America. Ben decided that he belonged back in his own country with his family. In March of 1775, he sailed from home. On April 19th, while he was at sea, war broke out between England and America. Chapter 7, Creating a New Nation. Let's see how far we get in this chapter. Ben reached Philadelphia on May 5th, 1775. The very next morning, he was asked to serve in the Continental Congress. This was a meeting of American leaders. It opened in Philadelphia on May 10th. Its main job was to win the war against England. At age 69, Franklin worked 12-hour days in Congress. One of his jobs was to organize the United States Postal Service. He soon had mail moving swiftly among all 13 colonies. This was crucial. To win the war, people throughout America had to work together. Another job didn't go as well. In the spring of 1776, Ben was sent north to Canada with 3 other men. They tried to convince the Canadians to fight on America's side. Their efforts failed. Worse still, Ben nearly died from the cold and the strain of the trip, but he made it back to Philadelphia in time to take part in the great question of the day. Should America declare its independence from England? The American people were divided. Many thought the war would end quickly and tax trouble would be solved. Then America returned to English rule. But just as many Americans wanted to break free of England and form a new colony. America's leaders were also divided. Benjamin Franklin was a leader of the congressmen who wanted to create a new nation. Congress was to vote on the issue in July of 1776. If the vote came out for independence, America would need to explain exactly why it was breaking away from England. Congress asked 5 men to write a Declaration of Independence. Benjamin Franklin was one. Thomas Jefferson of Virginia was another. These pictures here, I don't know if you can see them very well, but these are like different flags that were used during the 13 colonies. So just these different ones represented some of the colonies or their ideas, and some of them are still kind of famous today, like the Don't Tread on Me one with the snake, and the one with the original 13 colonies, the stars in a circle. I know you guys have questions, but let's read a little bit further, and then I'll answer your questions at the end, okay? And I'm glad you're thinking. Jefferson did most of the writing. Ben made a few changes. For example, Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable." Ben improved it to, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." This was a simpler way to say that some things were plain to see. Congress voted on January 2nd. With a little arm twisting by Ben, the vote came out strongly for independence. The 13 colonies were now the United States of America. Congress approved the Declaration 2 days later. Ever since, Americans have honored that day, July 4th, 1776, as the country's birthday. At the signing of the Declaration, Ben reportedly made a famous comment. John Hancock was president of Congress. He wanted everyone to cooperate. "We must all hang together," he said. "Yes," Ben answered. "We must all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately." He meant that they must work together, or else. If America lost the war, England might hang each leader by the neck. Here's a picture of the Continental Congress. As you get older, you'll see like a more famous picture of it. Let's see how much further. All right, let's keep going. Ben was happy about independence, but his heart was heavy for personal reasons. Many families, including the Franklins, were split by the war. Ben begged his son to quit as New Jersey governor. He wanted William to side with America. The father and son wrote letters back and forth. They had some heart-to-heart talks. Ben could not convince William to leave his post. He had become an English gentleman, just as Benjamin had wanted. One by one, England's colonial governors were removed from office. They were replaced with Americans. William was thrown out of office. He was put in jail in a filthy cell where he nearly died. Still, William Franklin stayed loyal to England. Nothing ever hurt me so much, Ben said about his son siding with Britain. A word from Ben to Congress might have freed William, but Ben never spoke up for his son. The United States was fighting for its life. He felt that special treatment for William would be unfair. In Britain, people were more afraid of Benjamin Franklin than George Washington and his army. Rumors spread that Benjamin was a wizard. He had invented weapons that could destroy all of England. He had a tiny device that could turn buildings into ash. He had reflecting mirrors that could burn the English Navy. He had an electrical machine that would flip England upside down like a pancake. Of course, Ben had no such weapons, and for quite some time it looked like America would lose the war. Then, in the fall of 1776, Congress sent Franklin overseas on a mission that could decide the war. He was to convince France to help America fight England. Once in France, Franklin found that British spies were everywhere. He couldn't always meet with French leaders. Sometimes messages had to be written in invisible ink and signed with secret code names. But after a year of work, Ben got what he came for. We're going to stop our reading there for today. We'll finish up the chapter 7 tomorrow, and then we'll read chapter 8. Okay?